Hey everybody, Jim Chester coming to you live from the world-renowned Gonstead Clinic in Mount Horeb, Wisconsin. I have Rich Cranwell with me here. He was an intern here with Dr. Clarence Gonstead, and I'm just going to let him talk a little bit about his experiences of getting to know Clarence Gonstead, the practitioner, but not only that, the level of the influence he had as just a human on Dr. Rich here. Welcome to the opportunity to speak about what's happening here at the Gonstead Extravaganza this weekend. Dr. Rich.
Well, it's definitely my pleasure. I appreciate the opportunity, and it played a very big part, in fact, the part in my life. Dr. Gonstead was my mentor, and I can stand here in front of you right now and tell you that if it wasn't for Dr. Clarence S. Gonstead, I would have never practiced chiropractic. And he turned it all around for me. He made me what I am today, both not only professionally but also personally. I'm a Logan graduate of 1976, January, and I started here in April 1st, was my very first day at the Gonstead Clinic, April 1st of 1976, and I was their intern at that time. And at that time, I had never taken an x-ray before, and so Dr. Sandy Chilson was very helpful and very kind to teach me how to take x-rays. So as an intern, it was my job. That's what I was being paid for. In fact, the pay was $100 a month, but that included all free room and board. I lived right here in the basement of the clinic, in the room downstairs that's called storage on the door, and we ate I ate all my meals down at the Caracol restaurant down there. So, and $100 a month you might think is not much, but however, all room, all board, I had no expenses. And since I worked right where I lived, I didn't have to have a car or anything like that. And so I met Dr. Clarence Gonstead at the time. I'd never met him before. And I had been up here a month before in March of '76. They had a vacancy for an internship. I applied for it. And through literally, as far as I'm concerned, through the grace of God, I was accepted. And so I started on April 1st. And that turned my entire life around, personally and professionally. And Dr. Gonstead was very kind, very humble. He, on that very first day when we introduced ourselves to each other in the dark room of the x-ray room, because the doctors at that time would all gather there at mid-morning for a little bit of Wisconsin cheese and crackers and a piece of fruit or so. And at that time, Dr. Clarence Gonstead and I introduced ourselves to each other. And when he was finished eating, he said, here. He extended his hand. He took my hand. He said, come on, follow me around. I'll show you how to be a chiropractor. And so for the next 12 months, 13 months, that's what I did. When I wasn't taking x-rays and interviewing new patients, I followed Dr. Clarence Gonstead around. And so he taught me all about the Gonstead technique, the specificity of it, the accuracy of it, and the consistent results that you can get just from treating patients. In addition to that, by being here and living in the clinic here, he and his wife would take me out for dinner a lot. There was also a gentleman that was very close. He was the manager of the Caracol, a gentleman by the name of Ned McGinley, and he would drive the Elvis Presley Cadillac around, and we go out for dinner. On that first day that I met Dr. Gonstead on April 1st, it was also the day that he invited me out for lunch. And so we went down to the Caracol, and he bought me my very first Heineken. I had never heard of Heineken beer, obviously never tasted it. Myself, born and raised in St. Louis, it was always Anheuser-Busch products. And so he treated to me my first Heineken. And here we are 42 years later, and that's the only beer I drink. But more specifically, 6 months later, I went home to St. Louis for a weekend, got married, and at the time, Dr. Gonstead, numerous people from the Gonstead Clinic came to St. Louis for the wedding reception and the wedding, and Dr. Gonstead and Mrs. Gonstead, as their wedding present to my new bride and I, gave us a 2-week stay at their condo on Singer Island off of West Palm Beach. And so again, very helpful, very kind, and very considerate in all facets of life, not only professionally but also personally. And a little funny story that when my wife and I drove down to Singer Island, we arrived, and it was at a condo, which a high-rise apartment building basically, and we pulled in, and obviously the car had Missouri license plates on it, and there was a lady on one of the top balconies leaned over and said, "Are you the newlyweds?" And yes, and with that, she shouted out to everybody, "The newlyweds are here, the newlyweds are here." And for the next 2 weeks, my wife and I were taken out for breakfast and lunch and dinner and things like that. After that, we came back to Mount Horeb here, and my wife now lived with me at the Gonstead Clinic. And Dr. Gonstead was instrumental in saying, "Well, what's your wife going to do while you're up here watching me?" "I don't know," I said, and so he put her to work in the Gonstead seminar office during the day and had her working the front desk at the Caracol Hotel in the evening, so kept my new bride busy. And with the end result, Mrs. Gonstead and my wife, Denise, became good friends, and they would go shopping because Mrs. Gonstead many times would go on shopping trips to purchase things that she would sell in her gift shop, and my wife would go along with her. And so they became good friends over the time, with the end result. Then on Saturday nights, Ned McGinley, as he drove the Elvis Cadillac, my wife and I and Clarence would sit in the back seat, and Mrs. Gonstead would sit in the front seat. And so during that time also, Dr. Gonstead taught me one of the things that it's very ingrained in me. I'm very passionate about it, to what he owed his success to. He said, "No, there's no secret to it. Success is nothing more than taking care of your patients, being there for them when they need you, whatever time or day it is, being there for them, taking care of them, and they in turn will take care of you." And it's as simple as that. With the end result, he taught me the first time I'd ever heard it, and I still utilize it throughout my life, personal and professional now, is the KISS principle. It stands for KISS, which stands for Keep It Simple, Stupid. And Dr. Clarence always said, too, depending on who you're talking to, you can change the last word to sweetheart. So keep it simple, sweetheart. And one of the funniest things I witnessed, or humorous things that still as if it was yesterday, and yet it's been 40-plus years, Dr. Gonstead treating his wife. And on one occasion, she got up off the pelvic bench and said to him, "That wasn't very good. In fact, I don't even think it moved," and pointed her finger at him and said, "I hope you get better at this." And she walked out of the room. With the end result, Dr. Clarence Gonstead looked at me and said, "Son, let that be a lesson." And even to this day, I've always told students of mine, since after I left the Gonstead Clinic, I went back to St. Louis, my hometown, and applied to Logan College to teach because I had learned an overwhelming amount of information, not only about anatomy and physiology, chiropractic, but the Gonstead method, how simple it was, specific and accurate. I wanted to teach that at Logan because it had never been taught at Logan. They hired me, and here I am today, just celebrating my 40th anniversary of teaching at Logan full-time. I teach there in the mornings, and then I have a full-time practice afternoon and evenings. And having my wife up here at the time taught her about chiropractic, so she was very instrumental throughout the years. So not only did the Gonsteads, Dr. Clarence and his wife Elvira, not only did they help my wife and I professionally, but also personally. So I basically owe everything I know in chiropractic, my success in chiropractic, to Dr. Clarence Gonstead himself. And it made all the difference in my life. It really did.
Well, it's interesting that you share such a valuable message with everybody out there. Something I didn't share with you earlier. When I worked in a chiropractic office for 5.5 years, I also lived with the doctors that I worked with.
Excellent.
So it was really cool to hear how you lived here with Dr. Clarence and how it impacted your life. And when I lived with these chiropractors, what they taught me was how to talk chiropractic.
Amen.
They taught me the tenets of the profession, that chiropractic is based on subluxation, detection, correction, that innate intelligence is vital to the future of the communication of chiropractic.
And that's all it is. And it is, again, very simple. Keep it simple. And, I've noticed now in my teachings at the college for the students that I teach down there, and recently the past year or so, I found more and more that I'm saying that, after all these years, how we treat the patient, where we treat, the subluxation hasn't changed. Anatomy hasn't changed. Physiology, neurology, neuroanatomy hasn't changed. It's still the same. So what Dr. Gonstead was showing and teaching and practicing 50, 60, 70 years ago is still applicable today in 2018. Why? Because the body hasn't changed. It's still there. How we would treat the subluxation is still the same. The results that you get from treating that subluxation specifically, accurately, so that it's reproducible, no matter who you are, is still applicable today. It's phenomenal. But when you get right down to it, it's really quite simple. This ain't rocket science.
So what does it mean for you to take all of the teaching and all the passion that you got from Gonstead and now to be able to pass that on to the next generation of chiropractors?
Everything. I haven't been up here at the Gonstead Clinic now approximately about 25 years since I've been in this clinic. And it has been very heartwarming. It has done my heart very, very good today to see all of the young students, the young practitioners who are up here now, the enthusiasm that they share, the passion that they want to see. In addition to, in the past few hours, yesterday and today, I've met with some of the senior chiropractors that were of my generation that were up here that knew Dr. Gonstead at the same time, and we've reminisced. Now all of a sudden, at the other end of the spectrum, that we knew each other, we met each other 40 plus years ago when we were all just getting started, and here we are 40-some years. And interestingly enough, I find, like myself, they're all still in practice. Why? Because we have that passion. There's an old saying that I've used, and I've heard a lot. If you like what you do, if you love what you do, you enjoy what you do, you will have never worked a day in your life. And I can honestly say right now, on this day, as we stand here right now, I have never worked a day in my life. More and more of the patients becoming more frequent patients are asking me now, well, you're not going to retire, are you? Or please don't retire. Well, and my response is, how can I retire when I've never worked? And on top of that, what would I do if I retired? And, frequently patients will respond by saying, well, isn't there something you'd like to do? I said, yeah, I've been doing it for 40 plus years. Of course, I still get the enjoyment. Why? Because, in my opinion, really, it's doing a good Lord's work. You're helping others so that they can live a more productive life. And in so doing so, can possibly, hopefully, help others. And that's what it's all about. If you can help somebody, if I can help somebody, or chiropractic or Gonstead chiropractic can help somebody lead a better life, a less painful life. They can take the misery out of that life and make that patient drug-free. My goodness, why would you not want to be involved and promote that and teach that so that it goes on for decades and generations?
Yeah, and you touched on something right there. You said drug-free. And, I just want to be clear to everybody with what we do with Chiro Hustle. We don't believe that it's us against them as a chiropractic profession against the medical industry. Right. We just believe that the medical industry is starting to show their true colors and is starting to fail, and people are starting to want chiropractic services because of those reasons, and they just didn't know chiropractic was the right answer.
The other thing I can add to that is that Dr. Gonstead was always a very firm believer in nutrition. But he would never suggest or recommend a nutritional supplement until after he had fixed the subluxation, because he wanted, quote, chiropractic to get the credit for helping that patient, okay? Over the years, I left here in 1977, and a few years later I was very fortunate and blessed to obtain a master's degree in clinical nutrition. So in my practice, we also suggests nutrition, because as Dr. Gonstead said also too, that the human body is much like a machine. It's like an automobile. And so therefore we have the biomechanical part, but we cannot not look at the biochemical part. And in most individuals, most patients, most human beings, it's a combination of both, the biomechanical and the biochemical and the biomechanical part. You put those two together. Because let's face it, if a patient has a magnesium deficiency, yes, we know we take care of the subluxation, the nerve is functioning properly, but if the patient has a magnesium deficiency, they're still going to have muscle cramps, leg cramps, they're still going to be constipated, they're still going to be forming kidney stones, etc. They're not going to sleep well, they can even become depressed. And it's interesting too, those things, the physiology of the body, again, like the anatomy, the neuroanatomy, the physiology, it hasn't changed. It's still the same body. So again, as I said before, you can still utilize the Gonstead notes, the Gonstead practice, the utilization today. And what I also find too, not only the specificity, the precision, which gets you the consistent results, but in the Gonstead technique, it incorporates many other different things, such as instrumentation, static palpation, motion palpation, the law of 13, if there's chiropractors out there, they know what I'm talking about. The Merrick chart, which tells you straight out of anatomy textbook that this nerve goes to that organ, that nerve goes to that organ. So if that nerve is irritated, if there's a subluxation there, that organ is not going to function at its optimum capability. It just isn't. And everybody knows that. No other healthcare profession is going to argue that point. It's just that we as chiropractors, as Dr. Gonstead taught me, we as chiropractors are interested. Our motto, our objective, our mission is to investigate and find the subluxation, accept it where you find it, and then fix it. And then, my goodness, doctor, leave it alone. If it ain't broke, and I heard this from Dr. Gonstead, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. With the end result, yes, you may have a chiropractic office visit and not get an adjustment. There may not be a subluxation at that point, okay? So, it incorporates all the things, anatomy, physiology, the methods of analysis, like I said, static and motion and instrumentation, the law of 13, all these things. It puts it all together as a technique, and then also shows us how to determine what the listing is, in what direction a vertebra is misaligned, and then a specific contact, line of drive, torque, if you will, and placement to fix that bone specifically. With the end result, you get conditions like shingles. Nobody out there knows what to do with them, and the standard procedure is that, well, it'll heal in time. If that person with shingles gets to see a Gonstead practitioner within a week or 2 weeks, a Gonstead practitioner can take care of that shingles and it goes away and it never goes into the postherpetic syndrome. That's fascinating. If you can take a baby with colic and by Gonstead chiropractic specifically adjust a single vertebra and that baby no longer has colic, you may have saved that baby's life. Because we hear so many times about sudden infant death. We also hear about, abuse of the child, that the child has been, no longer ends up, not making it just because the baby was crying all the time and the parents just didn't know what to do. The shaken baby syndrome type of thing. Oh, my gosh. And maybe all that baby needed was a Gonstead-specific, precise, accurate adjustment. And I've seen it over and over again. The technique is reproducible by chiropractor after chiropractor. Again, as I mentioned a little earlier, sir, is that, there's no rocket science. There it is. And it was, put together, Dr. Gonstead put it together. We're talking almost 100 years ago now. And it's still applicable today. You don't need to change any of it. We've had a few little tweaks, but it's still the same.
Well, some of the things you said there, Dr. Rich, is when I went out and sold chiropractic, like I mentioned to you pre-interview, I scheduled in over 2,500 people in 36 months, and that was a great thing. But you know what I did is I went out there with that Merrick chart, and I went out there with a lumbar degeneration model, And I would ask people between a healthy vertebrae, that we have that on there, and then we have the decayed one, and I'd say, what does yours look like? And they're like, well, I don't know. And I'm like, well, I don't either. Exactly. But if you go see the chiropractor, they're going to be able to take some specific films, so some x-rays on you. They're going to tell you what's going on, how much concern there is, and then they'll tell you how they can help you. But I said the really cool thing about the chiropractor is they're not only going to talk to you about your health within your spinal capabilities of being healthier with spinal alignment, but they're also going to talk to you about these three things that are very important to the future of you, is to eat well, to think well, and to move well. But first, they're going to start with this really awesome thing called an adjustment. Yes. They're going to get you adjusted, and then as you build a relationship with this practitioner, then you're going to be able to use them as your trusted resource and ask them anything that you might have under the sun about those other three things. So if you want to eat right, the chiropractor's your resource. If you want to start thinking properly, the chiropractor's your resource. And if you want to start moving right, the chiropractor is your resource.
Amen. And that's the way it's been for all these decades and generations. Again, as I said a moment ago, it hasn't changed. And it is quite simple. And it's all a package deal. Because no matter what, if you take care of the subluxation, but if the person is still involved in, as we refer to it, the SAD diet, the sad American diet, and pumping in, as I call this, is Dr. Cranwell speaking now, I call it the four white devils, and that's the white sugar, the white salt, the white gluten, and the white dairy. If you're still eating, lots and lots of that, no wonder. It doesn't make any difference how good of an adjustment you get. The body is still, as I said before, it's a combination of biomechanical and biochemical. And so therefore the chiropractor will address both of those without the use of medication, without the use of, a lot of different things. I also, too, for the past 22 years, I have my own live radio broadcast. It airs each and every Friday morning in St. Louis, and it's been an excellent way to get the word out about chiropractic, subluxation, and nutrition. And I'm very proud of that for the past 22 years. And it's live, so individuals out there will call in. And, well, Dr. Cranwell, what about this? What about that? And I said, well, yes. And then we go right back to the basics, the fundamentals. As I say, a lot of times you can find these things in a high school biology book. Okay, now what are we going to do to straighten it out? And I've always found it interesting, and it's sad at times, that most people go to their primary care physician for an annual physical. Most people go at least once, if not twice, to their dentist for a dental exam annually, okay? But so the general populace out there does not go to a chiropractor, sometimes not for a whole lifetime. All right, and so therefore whatever we can do to change that in and of itself would be fantastic and an excellent opportunity to get the word out. And that's why 22 years ago I decided to start the radio show to reach as many people as I can at one single time. And it's been very enjoyable. After the hour live show, I've always come out pumped up, because, again, bottom line, helping people so they can help others. And I always end the radio show with that, and also, too, with the statement that no matter, the only thing I want listeners to do for me is to tell others about the program so they, too, can listen, so that we all can learn about not only Gonstead, not only chiropractic, but the Gonstead specificity of it. All right. And Dr. Gonstead always talked about, here's something else that I just remembered, he always talked about Dr. Hedo. Dr. Hedo, H-E-D-O. And he always told us at the time, Dr. Hedo was the chiropractor who would hit every darn one. He'd roll them this way, roll them that way, do all sorts of cervicals, and the patient never got better because Dr. Hedo didn't adjust the one single vertebra that was actually causing the problem. So let's be specific. Let's be precise. Let's be accurate so we can get consistent results. With the end result gave birth to a book called The Notes, which has all the conditions, which while I was living up here every day as I walked around and followed him and shadowed him, I would write everything down. And then in the evening I'd go downstairs in the apartment while my wife was watching TV. I would be writing these notes into a format. Where to look for that subluxation, for this condition, for that condition, whether a patient had acne, or they had, they were tired or they were fatigued. Okay, you look at the Merrick chart. You found the subluxation at T9. Then all of a sudden, you know what other symptoms to ask him. You know the questions to ask him because you know T9 goes to the adrenal gland. Well, if the adrenal gland is not getting its nerve supply, it's not going to function its optimum level. And as Dr. Gonstead always mentioned, the domino effect. If you don't fix the first domino, it's going to knock all the other ones down. So let's fix that, as I mentioned a moment ago to you. Our mission is to investigate the cause and then fix it precisely, accurately, consistently, and get the results so that people with myriad of complaints, symptoms. Many of the students always ask as they're going into clinic, they're going to start into clinic, Dr. Cranwell, where do I start? Somebody comes in with all these symptoms from headaches to neuralgia into the legs and numbness in the feet, cold hands, cold feet, insomnia, constipation. Dr. Cranwell, where do I start? And I said, well, first of all, KISS. Keep it simple. Sweetheart, exactly. And from there, you just examine the patient. Utilize the instrumentation, the static palpation, the motion palpation, and all of a sudden, then again, too, my goodness, I just remembered, too, we split the spine into the parasympathetic and the sympathetic. And a lot of chiropractors don't do that, and that's regrettable. But I will tell you this, as all the other Gonstead practitioners, yes, it does work that way so that if you treat the patient for a subluxation in the parasympathetic, that will slow the symptoms down. So if you're having somebody who has been, let's say, diagnosed with anxiety, panic attacks, insomnia, nightmares, and things like that, blinking of an eye, trouble swallowing, tachycardia, you go up and adjust that upper cervical where you find the subluxation, and that patient can feel the difference immediately. Blinking of the eye, one of the nicest and easiest. If it is due to subluxation, that is gone almost instantly. Opening up a congested ear, almost instantly. So there's so many things that you and I together need to get out to the public that they don't think about going to a chiropractor. Why would I go to a chiropractor? I would only go to a chiropractor if my back hurts or I get a stiff neck. No, that's not true. So again, gives reason for my radio show in St. Louis, for my teaching at Logan, to teach the young generation to be the chiropractors or the Gonstead practitioners of the future, and also what you're doing here to promote amongst the public of what really is chiropractic all about.
What you shared with me, it must make your heart smile to have met me earlier before we did the interview, for me to just, eloquently tell you what I'm doing, why I'm doing it, and who it's for. And I didn't even know you had a radio show when we first talked. Yes. So when I come down for that Epoch with Troy Dukowitz and I speak there in November, I'd love to be on as a guest.
I'm going to have you a guest. Many times over the years we've had practitioners of other disciplines as guests, okay? And, it's amazing. There's other medical doctors out there. There's a dentist that's on the show quite often. We all think alike, as I just mentioned, taking care of the patient, looking for, investigating the root of the condition, not just masking the symptoms. So, yeah, there's a growing populace. I will tell you, 40-some years ago when I first started practicing, things were a lot different. Nobody would come to, medical doctors or other practitioners would not come to me as a chiropractor. Now that has changed. Hospitals were not open to chiropractic. Now they are. In fact, my graduation day, one of my classmates' father was actually incarcerated because he was practicing in a state that did not have chiropractic licensure yet. Now, that's not that long ago. And so just in the past, let's say 40, 45 years, chiropractic has grown by leaps and bounds. People now come to us as the first provider, as the initial, as a portal of entry, as they call it. And for, as you just mentioned before, what's this, what's going on here? I'm going to go see the chiropractor first rather than checking with their primary care. So things have changed tremendously, 180 degrees in just the 40 years that I've been practicing. And so therefore, yes, it does my heart warm. I'm very excited to be here. This is nice. Like I said at the beginning of this, it's been 25 years since I've been at the Gonstead Clinic. Why did I come this time? Well, I heard they had a seminar, but they have seminars throughout the years. There was just something that pulled me up here, which is coincidentally 42 years ago. As I said, I had just graduated from Logan, but I wasn't happy. I felt very incompetent. I felt very, I didn't know anything. And I am a man of faith, so I prayed. And I was led up here. And the whole time, at that time, it took 7 hours to drive from St. Louis to Mount Horeb. And I can remember, as if it was yesterday, that whole drive, there was a strange magnetism that just continually pulled me up here. And I took note of it at the time. You know, I just got to go. And here we are 42 years later, to the same month. And I felt the same thing yesterday driving from St. Louis up here. I could have flown. I thought, no, I'm going to do what I did. And it's a 6-hour drive. And but it was the same feeling that I just needed to go today. And so here you are, and here we are. So yes, it was meant to be. And I believe in things like that.
Well, I'm going to close out, and I'm going to say a couple things. When I was out there campaigning, front line, scheduling people in for chiropractic visits, I would tell people this. We all know somebody that's suffering or struggling with poor health. Oftentimes you just don't know where to go or who to trust. So I'd always say, why don't you try the chiropractor and see if you can build a relationship with them? And if you do build a relationship with them, they're going to be a vessel for information for not only you, but your community's health. So let me get you in to go see this chiropractor. And then they'll come in, they'll do some health history on you, they'll do some exam, and then they'll tell you how they can help you. So I always met people where they were, told them exactly what was to be expected when they came in and saw the practitioner. And then I would tell them, there's no strings attached. If you don't feel like it's a right fit for you, at least you're going to know more about your health than what you did when you first met me and you first met them. So with that, I'm just going to say thank you for sharing the story.
My pleasure, for sure. Thank you very much.
And I'm just going to close out and say you're just one story away. So keep telling it and keep hustling. Thank you.
Thank you.
That was fun.
Yeah, it was. It really was.